Cool. So the next one I want to talk about is my great grandma. Her name was Ela Folks. All right. And I'm gonna explain this both as like criminal testimony, but also, you know what I mean, for what it's worth. But I'm also gonna explain it from the spiritual perspective that I experienced it in. And you might not like that, but it's how I remember the situation and it's my perspective of the situation. So that's the way that I'm going to tell it. Um, if you want to question me in person and get a more clinical, quick response to all your, questions or your fake investigation or whatever, then you can always do that with me in person. But I'm well aware that the reason why you don't is because you're literally just being cruel. So, yeah. So if you want clinical responses, then you're going to have to put me in your own little clinical environment or whatever and ask me clinical questions. But until then, I'm going to tell the story the way that I want to tell the story. And the actual criminal information throughout, it's cool if you actually want to use that to prosecute people and go after, sex offenders, murderers, people who hurt children, things like that. It would be really awesome. Like, I'm not going to apologize for the attitude because I've been in a situation for a couple years now where I've spoken up and I've been very loud, maybe not in video format because I really wasn't trying to put everything on blast like that. But if you could imagine sitting down and writing full novels, at this point, I've written novels trying to get help for a child, for at least one child, but for all the children, basically, okay? And I was not able to succeed in that. With the amount of time and effort and, crime stuff that I actually wrote about, and I'm telling you, I have written for 2 years. So the information that I've actually unleashed on this channel, which I almost don't even consider a channel because I just feel like I'm this dorky person who's only using YouTube right now to not be completely invisible, which is what people want for me. That has gone on way too long. I'm not doing this anymore. They've made me some kind of little slave guinea pig or whatever, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. It's only getting worse. It's not getting any better. There's been no improvement whatsoever. I know that you guys told me I was being trafficked by the Biden administration while that was happening. You let me know that there was at least a Secret Service agent and a bunch of NSA agents involved in me being trafficked and people attempting to sex traffic me across the nation. I was told that this situation was going to improve as soon as Trump took office, which was difficult for me to believe because I was treated really badly the last time Trump was in office as well. And if you were telling me that the Biden-Kamala administration was involved in witchcraft and stuff, and that I was one of the people being persecuted by their administration, and then you're telling me that it's going to change over to another administration that we already kind of lived through that was also not fully a Christian administration, it is also a cult administration that has its own cult group or whatever. And now we returned back into that. And instead of me being pulled off these streets and rescued and helped, at least by being given some kind of information, paperwork, summons, anything at all, any help whatsoever, nothing came because everybody went along with this thing to have my kid taken away from me. They've treated me like this the entire time and put me through all of this shit and had me like have to escape organ harvesters and shit like that. And now all of a sudden they're telling me that I've been disabled since I was 16 years old and all this shit. After I had to go work a full-time job. Like, I worked 2 fucking jobs. I was working 15-hour fucking days. Now all of a sudden I'm disabled. Great. And also, I wrote to the Social Security Administration about how disabled I am and that people were, I guess, getting checks for me and stuff. I wrote to them over a year ago, and no one still did anything. Um, I'm not sure if you guys know what it means to actually be aggressively stalked and trafficked and to be like the subject of a, targeting murder campaign, MDK campaign. You kind of have to protect your life every single day wherever you go. There's no there's no help with that. There are celebrities and politicians who have enough money to protect themselves, to pay for bodyguards or to pay for, they have surveillance. For some reason, other people are able to have protection and take protective measures and do things like go in a house and lock the door behind them and actually be safe. But I'm not allowed to have that kind of protection. I'm not allowed to go into my own place and turn around and lock the door behind me and be safe in there at all. And even if I thought that I was, I still wouldn't be, because all of these nasty little douchebags who have their little invisibility suits and their little tool bags or whatever can just, they could just have a copy. They could just get a copy of your key of any, they just have, they just already have a copy of your key. It doesn't even matter. They know what your passcode, your passwords are for your whatever systems. It's like there is no such thing as actually locking my door, and I'm not sure you can lock your door either. These are problems that probably do need to be addressed. These are, nasty little secrets that people should not be kept in the dark about. You shouldn't be worried about, making sure that there aren't any dissenters that are gonna, tell on each other. You should actually be a little bit more transparent about what's going on, because why do you have such dirty little secrets that you're having to worry like that? Like, what you really should be worried about is testing each other to see who is sex offenders and protecting the whistleblowers, because that's how bad it really is. A lot of the crimes that they're worried about people finding out about are, they're sex crimes that they commit and that they allow each other to commit. And I'm sorry, but just because you're wealthy, that shouldn't give you the right to just molest anyone who you want, in all the different sick and messed up ways that you guys have developed to molest people. Not with technology, not in person. There's just, the sex offense, the sex offending kind of needs to be coming to a very abrupt stop. Everybody who, supplies the sex offenders and supplies the needy pedophiles and the predators and shit at the top, that needs to fucking stop too. As far as I'm concerned, the whole nation, the whole world is divided now between who's pedophiles and who's not, who's sex offenders and who's not. And whoever wants to protect the sex offenders and the pedophiles, they can just be thrown into the same fucking trash heap as them. Yeah, so anyways, this dude, my great grandma's name was Ela. I guess I'm going to tell that story first. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to tell the more potentially gruesome story. I might go ahead and just get ballsy and tell that one in a little while. That one does deal with a 16-year-old potentially. It is really bad, and I'm not sure how to even address that one. So after people set me up to be a witness to human sacrifices, I was standing in my kitchen, and this was before I fled from the apartment I was living in while I was, working to get my kid back the last time that they took my kids from me. I was living in an apartment. By the time I got them back, I was living in an apartment I paid nearly $1,000 a month for. I had a couple vehicles. I was a manager of a Pizza Hut. I was also beginning to take recovery coaching classes. Um, and that's whenever they pulled the invisibility suit shit and the the human sacrifice shit. And I can't remember if I'd already gone to New York once already and returned. But my great grandma, I felt like my great grandmother all of a sudden started talking to me while I was in my kitchen, which was really weird because, like, I hadn't been thinking about my great grandma, and she hadn't been a part of my life for a long time. She's been passed away for a really long time. But all of a sudden, like, I felt her presence and I felt her start to talk to me. And she was like, "Do you remember what the last thing I said to you was?" And I was like, what was the last thing that this lady said to me? And you know what? The last thing that she said to me was, "This is going to be the last time that we see each other." So all of a sudden, out of the blue, my great grandmother's spirit begins to talk to me and ask me what the last thing she said to me was. Just so crazy to me, you guys. And the last thing that she said to me was that it would be the last time we saw each other. But that wouldn't be for 2 years. It would still be 2 years before she would actually pass away. And so that's another weird thing. So I remembered back to whenever she told me that it was going to be the last time that we ever saw each other, right? And it was just like so mind-blowing to me because, like, I hadn't thought of it the way that it was now being presented to me before. It didn't all fit together until, like, I felt like she was talking to me in the kitchen, and then it was just like epiphany after epiphany after epiphany after epiphany, and it was just like so much information and knowledge that there was no way that I had just gotten it from any source aside from God. Like, it was that big of a deal that all of these like this giant puzzle just began to, it was a puzzle I didn't even know was a puzzle. I didn't even know that it needed to be done or completed. And, all of these parts just started to fit together. And all of a sudden it was a puzzle coming together that I didn't know I needed to be solving. But as my family, we used to all go out to eat. And we would sometimes go pick up my Aunt Julia and my great granny from Pampa. My great granny owned a house there in Pampa that I think now belongs to my Aunt Julia. And we, as a family, we would all go out to eat together. And it would be once in a blue moon, once in a while. Sometimes it would be for some holiday related thing. Sometimes it would be like for someone's birthday or whatever. And sometimes my great granny would pay for all of it. She was so sweet. She was like this tiny little lady. Not that it necessarily mattered who paid for any of it, you know what I mean? But she was just this very beautiful, giving lady. And when she sat down to eat at one of those restaurants, she would eat more than any of us. And I didn't understand at the time. I can easily say that I made it entirely through my 20s without understanding a thing about, adult elder abuse or neglect or anything like that. Completely unaware of things like that, except for whenever um, I myself went through that uh, issue that they tried to say was just idiopathic intracranial hypertension or whatever. And they tried to say that it was just some weird neurological whatever and pass it off as nothing. And then I got to experience people not helping me with, you know, the showers or the hygienic needs that I would go about a month or so without people helping me the way that I needed while I had to be hospitalized, and then while I was like bedridden at home and stuff, I definitely needed help and experienced total neglect. Like no one even fed me, dude. Like it was really bad. They just really wanted me to die. It was horrible. Like I couldn't even get nurses to help me wash my hair, dude, and I couldn't hold my hands up at all. Like it was so bad. It was so terrible. Like as soon as I got home, I just cut off all my hair because no one would help me with it. Not even my, kid's dad. It was horrible. That situation, the nurses should have at least helped me, and they wouldn't even. My grandma had only talked to me personally a couple times, and I noticed that those couple times that she did, that other people in my family hovered over the conversation and they were heavily, invested in or interested in what we were talking about, and the conversation wouldn't really last very long, and it would be like some of the greatest words of wisdom ever, and then that was it. She once asked me a few questions about my kids and asked me why I wasn't married. And I told her that I wasn't getting along with the guys very easily. It just wasn't as easy for me to deal with them as it is for me to deal with the kids. And that I felt more comfortable. I felt like I could breathe a little bit better without the guys, without a boyfriend. And she said that she understood that. And it made me feel way better about being single. But I could tell that my family wasn't okay with that. And that was because they were sending people to try to hook up with me. That was all that they did. Like they basically make sure all the time. They try to make sure all the time that there's somebody that they can get information from, um, or about me from, and that they can get that person to do things to me, and get have things orchestrated around me to be absolutely horrible, basically. My great granny, she waited until everybody was outside and kind of waited until people were distracted, and she pulled me aside and she walked me behind some cars, and she looked at me and she said, I want you to know that this is the last time that you'll ever see me. This is the last time that you and I will ever see each other. And I love you. I love you very much and everything. And she really meant it. Like she was being so genuine. She'd pulled me out of the whole crowd of my family, and she'd snuck me by ourselves to tell me how much she loved me and to tell me that it would be the last time that we would be allowed to see each other. And then my grandmother came around the corner, and she saw that my great grandmother had pulled me aside and was talking to me in private, and she all of a sudden began to like make a fuss, and she was like, she saw that I was crying, and she immediately knew how dangerous it was for my great grandmother to be speaking to me in private like that. And so my grandma all of a sudden very deceitfully was like, oh, great granny's upsetting Donna over here, and just totally manipulated the situation against my great grandmother, which was so horrible and demonic, and it hurt so bad. It hurt me so bad that my great granny, after telling me how much she loved me like that and taking me aside like that, I was just bawling my eyes out and stuff like that. And like it hurt me so bad. Like my grandma was like, oh, she's upsetting Donna over here. She was like so evil and cruel, dude. Like you wouldn't believe that an old lady would be cruel and wicked or whatever, but she most certainly is. Like it was so bizarre, and they like immediately separated us, and I tried to be like no, you know what I mean? That wasn't what happened. They like wouldn't even let me speak up. It was crazy. It was like the moment that any word was spoken that would cause any, it was like that it caused a complete chaotic alarm over the entire family. Everyone rushed in and separated us, and it really was the last time that I ever saw my great grandma. Super messed up, you guys. Like all the lady did, all she had to do was step out on a limb and take me in private and speak to me genuinely in person and say something real to me. And it became the last time she was ever allowed to speak to me ever again, dude. Like before that, we were all allowed to go visit great granny and like go out to eat with her. And after that, dude, like I think that I got sent in one direction, she got sent in a complete opposite direction, and like it was really sad, honestly. And like I remember going to the house, at least I don't know when exactly it was, but they had like, it was her house, and they had a whiteboard, and they had marked on there how much money she owed them. Like Julia had a dry erase board where she had the money marked for how much money her mom owed her. It was super messed up. And then also my grandma, my mean bad grandma, she said that before my great granny died, that it was her and Julia that were with her. She said that my great grandma would cry a lot and would beg to see somebody else. She says that my great grandma would cry for affection and attention, and that my great granny would cry for one of them to lay down in bed beside her, for them to hold each other. She said that my grandma would cry just for someone to hold her hand. And I heard that nobody would do it. No one would. That, well, it was only apparently Julia and my grandma there in the end. And according to my grandma, they wouldn't lay down beside her and they wouldn't hold her hand. That they wouldn't show her, that they showed her basically no love at all right until the end. That's the story that she gave me. If they had a ceremony for her, I was never invited. No one ever told me about it. Couldn't tell you where that would have taken place. I know that Julia ended up with the house and I guess lives there now. It sounds like they just kept her there and didn't really let her do very much, and that she had to die just kind of alone with a lot of insensitivity around her and people who just wanted her house, basically. And then I know that my Julia ended up going on those cruise vacations that my family go on that I thought were questionable, while they go over to, the Grand Turks and whatever pedophile islands and everything, or to wherever their special banks are or whatever they're doing, elaborate cruises and stuff. Anyways, I'm pretty sure that they never took my, great granny on a cruise ship to see the whole world before she went out. And I don't think that they would have taken, I don't know that they took my grandpa, who they took out. You know what I mean? I don't think they took him on any nice cruise vacations, but the people who were involved in potentially being really cruel, neglectful, poisoners, and just mean, and the people who were there to take over the houses as soon as those people died and to take over their estates and everything, those guys sure went on cruise vacations. And I knew all about being kept, and if they really did keep my great granny like that, then they kept her for the last over 2.5 years of her life, and really I didn't really let her do very much of anything. Now, I mean, I guess there's other family members who would have been around there and would have been more closely in contact with them when all that was happening. And so, my Aunt Julia or my grandma or whoever wants to can throw fits and try to defend that situation and say that my great granny wasn't neglected. But from my own grandmother's words, she told me that my great grandmother was crying for attention and affection, laying in bed, bawling that she was dying of loneliness as they kept her isolated in bed and waited for her to die, basically. And I never would have thought that my great grandma was MDK'd deliberately. I thought for sure she would have just passed on of her own accord. Um, and I know that people acted like they were waiting for her to pass away, and they acted like that she was going to pass away for a really, really, really long time. And I all of a sudden thought that she was waiting for me, that she was waiting for me to come see her before she could pass away. Like, I really at the time thought that she was passing away of a natural death. I didn't realize that my own family could have been taking my own great granny out, and that she would have known how wrong that was to just hold somebody isolated and to just take them out early like that. So I have no idea the ways that my great granny would have suffered. And I at the time that she told me that it was going to be the last time that we saw each other and that we were immediately separated, um, I remember my heart sinking to the ground. I remember it being like a big secret that you know what I mean? It was such a big secret to everybody what was going on. And there was, that there was such a dramatic, um, you know, uh, such dramatic work to make sure that, nobody figured it out and that everybody stayed separated. And, that the minute it seemed like any of the relatives, were going to open their mouths to tell me anything, that they were suddenly, you know what I mean, spirited away, basically. And that same thing happened with my grandfather while he was in the hospice that he didn't actually belong in. He reached out and was trying to talk to me, and they would not let him talk to me either. So, I did see my Aunt Julia. Like, my Aunt Julia wasn't always the most sensitive gal or whatever. She was okay, it seemed. And then all of a sudden, I heard my grandma talking on the phone to her sister Julia. That's my grandma's sister anyway. And I couldn't believe the mad shit she was talking, dude, and the mad shit that they were talking back and forth about me. Like, I couldn't believe that Julia was talking about me like that, dude, like my great aunt. But yeah, I heard them talking. Like, I heard both my great aunts, a few different, my great uncle, and all kinds of stuff. Like, I would hear my great grandma on the phone, and she would deliberately talk mad shit looking right at me, and like basically let me hear the mad shit that they were talking back. And they all taught my cousin Alex to do the same thing. So the little girl that I was like talking about in one video, Sheila's daughter, who apparently, she's one of the bad guys now. I don't know, but it's really upsetting to, like, it was like all that I needed was that one more prompt about my great granny to look back and to really remember everything and how bad that was, and how bad my grandmother described, that my great grandmother's loneliness was before she passed, and how bizarre that is, because we were a family who all met together her whole life, You know what I mean? Me and all the other little fucking kids who used to play with wooden blocks back in the day, old school wooden blocks before Legos and shit, dude. Like, we used to play with those blocks on the floor. And I was born in the 80s, and the ladies still had those blocks from when my dad and uncle were little bitty kids. And then I remembered also that I had a great grandfather named Ben, who my brother Ben is named after. And that they say that my, my great grandma and my great grandpa were doing just fine. They'd always been doing just fine living together in that house in Pampa. And then there was one day that some of the family went over to visit, and they were all having coffee or tea, or they were all eating together or something like that. And that the old man just got up and began to walk across the room and had a heart attack as he was walking across the room and died just like mid-stride, fell on the floor dead. And that was it for great grandpa. That's the story that we were all told. I'm not sure how that really went down, but it sounds horrible. And then my great granny was basically on her own after that. And she would live for years by herself while I think Julia might have been trying to move in on her or trying to show up and be help to her, while also charging her for every penny that she helped her with or something. I'm not really sure, but right. And in the same time frame as Ben passing away from this supposed heart attack, that's the same time frame that or it won't be very long after that, or like I said, Ben is born and is named after Ben. And also Alex is born from my aunt and uncle at the time. And then when she's about 3 years old, Sheila will be slain or pass away, and then all of her siblings. So I'd say, I could be wrong, but within the same decade's time, at least, it would have been my great grandfather, and then, maybe a couple other people throughout that family who I didn't really know. I think there was somebody who passed away from Crohn's disease. There might have been other people on my grandpa's side too, out in California. So, you know what I mean? Between these two families, different people died. But I'd say within maybe even closer to a 5-year time frame, I'm not sure, but definitely within a 10-year time frame, lots of different grandparents died, and then new great grandkids were born. And then also, like, at least one mom died, and all of her fucking, or half of her siblings, and a whole bunch of other, kind of a lot of people within the same time frame. Oh, and I understand that happens sometimes, but if there were life insurance policies on those people that they didn't know about, that doesn't happen all the time. That part, if the house is illegally, I don't know what happened there, but if you get rid of somebody early so that you can take over their house and have that privacy to yourself, that's also fucking illegal as fuck. All right. And then I've got and then some of my grandma's brother or sister, there's another sister other than Julia, and it's this gal named Janet. And Janet and Larry apparently live out in Texas somewhere out there. I'm not going to tell you specifically, but they used to work for Boys Ranch. Oh, it used to be Cal Farley's Boys Ranch. And Cal Farley's. Oh, the where they did. Anyways, apparently, like, he shouldn't have been working for Boys Ranch. I'm just gonna say that. And I have a cousin Billy, and I used to actually really like my cousin Billy. Like my cousin Billy used to almost be kind of cool and stuff like that. He used to be like a hockey player and stuff. But then he married this chick named Becca, and Becca pushed out, a few kids. The kids ended up being super fucking cool. Those are like my cousins and shit, super cool ass cousins. But Becca is kind of a shit, and Becca ends up being part of this mess too. Now, I don't know about Billy's involvement personally. You would think that if Becca was involved, then Billy probably was too. But Becca and Julia definitely seem to be a part of the shit. I know that I tried to explain to Becca, and I actually did tell Becca some pretty serious things that should have concerned her, and rather than her being showing concern, she instead turned it around on me and started like just repeating vile things that other family members had said about me that didn't have a fucking thing to do with what I was saying, like as I was trying to get help from her. Oh, and they would come over and get weed from me sometimes, and then all of a sudden when my family started talking mad trash on me, they couldn't even like they were like not even asking me for bud anymore. Not that they were purchasing it from me, just that I would have extra bud and give it to them. Yeah, and then all of a sudden they started acting like they couldn't talk to me at all. So it was like the same thing. It was like uh by not talking to me at all, they, withdrew themselves from being the possibility of help. So basically, by knowing that my family was trying to hurt me, and then by them withdrawing themselves, and accusing me of whatever dumb shit, it made it to where I was no longer able to get help from or confide in my, cousin Billy, or his wife, and apparently was not going to be a part of these kids' lives anymore either, which really sucked because it was pretty cool to have those, extra kid cousins. And I'm not sure, but it seemed almost like my Uncle Clifford. I have an uncle named Clifford. It kind of seems like he was involved in the shit because, like, there was one year that I went to go eat with everybody for like Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever, and that I got my aunt's number, and it would be my dad's cousin. My dad has cousins, Lisa, my uncle and dad, anyways, they have cousins, Lisa and Carrie. And growing up, I really liked Lisa and Carrie. And then whenever I became an adult, I also liked Lisa and Carrie, but I couldn't tell whether or not they were bad guys. I couldn't tell whether or not they were some of the bad guys. Because my family, my parents were bad. My grandma and those, like, you know what I mean? My aunt and uncle were really bad. So I had to be really careful, like, who I trusted and who I asked for help and what I said to them. And you know what I mean? And I began to think that Lisa might not have anything to do with the bad stuff. And so I asked for their number, and they gave it to me one year. Well, I ended up not using it, but as soon as, but I don't know. It wasn't because it was more so because I didn't want to burden them. I just hadn't, it was like I did make it to that point, but I didn't. And then by the time that the next year rolled around, I was like, I got to get y'all's number again. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I definitely need it. Like, it wasn't a mistake the last time I asked. I don't need to just be bashful. Let me get y'all's number again. And Clifford was like, no. He was like, you can't have our number again. He was like, we tried this last time. We tried this last year. And I was like, okay, that's really weird. Well, I thought to myself, being like, well, it's not really up to you, dweeb. It's I'm trying to have a relationship with Lisa here. That's my, you know what I mean. That's my dad's cousin, anyways. Like, I'm pretty sure she's the one who I'm actually related to, and you're just married into the family, right? I mean, unless Clifford is also somehow my family member, and that these two family members who are related are married, but I don't think that's the case. All right. And then they had a couple kids too, or a few kids. All of them had kids in between there, both Lisa and Carrie. I'm not going to list off their names. I didn't really get to know those kids either because you know what I mean? I don't know what all they're involved in. I know that at least one of them is involved in some witchcrafty stuff. And obviously, if anybody's involved in the witchcrafty stuff, then they're probably part of it. They already got sucked into it, or they're being paid or controlled somehow. They're part of the problem, basically, and they're not going to be part of the solution at all. They're not going to be somebody that I can confide in at all. Anyone who practices witchcraft is the complete opposite of what I'm trying to do and everything that I stand for and believe in. Completely against witchcraft. It's hella irritating to me. I am okay with things like astrology, with psychic awareness, you know, um, real stuff, scientific stuff. I'm also interested in the supernatural, but this witchcraft stuff, that's all generally with baneful intent. I don't care what the intent is behind it. It's considered spiritual and universal meddling, and I'm not okay with it. It's considered a manipulation tactic. And I'm not okay with anybody manipulating things personally with their nasty witchcraft in their own favor. I think that that's quite selfish. Anytime that my grandma talked about her mom, my great granny, she didn't actually have anything good to say. She only said, like, she mostly talked about how she felt like she was abused by her mother. She would say that her mom wasn't a good person back in the day. She would say that my great granny abused all of the kids when they were young. That their parents abused them, um, and but that was a long, long time ago, way before people even acknowledged that child abuse was a thing. Honestly, my great uncle, there was some kind of fight that he got into with my cousin Billy or something, and this involved a baseball bat. Somehow or another, the one or both of them, one or the other, took a baseball bat to the other. I'm not sure what all went down there, but it sounds pretty bad. So there was some different kind of weird secret abuses that it sounded like were going on within the family, and that things had gotten quite out of hand. And I think everything is okay these days, and that it's been a long time since all of that happened. But there were definitely a lot of problems throughout my family that people didn't like to address, and we would kind of get together and you would feel the weird vibes between everybody, but there would never be any real communication. Not as far as I could see. I knew that there was communication going on behind my back, of course, when people would say certain dumb shit or act a certain way. Um, but and then also I noticed that it seemed like my cousin Carrie got really bad off. And then they heard that I was worried about them, or she heard that I was worried about her. And then I noticed that they started posting all of these disgusting pictures where she makes herself look really, really decrepit and wretched and really bad off. And then she's got like some kid in the picture. I don't know if that's her personal kid or if that's her grandkid, but she has the kid looking all like kind of evil and kind of acting like she's so concerned for her fucked up mom or grandma or whatever the fuck. But it's basically pictures that Carrie made to kind of make fun of me saying that I was concerned about her. Because obviously, if that's somebody in my family who's getting really strung out really bad and is really bad off, like, so bad that she's going to look like she's turning into a skeleton in her pictures, and, that she's going to look like she's really struggling like that. It made me think that she could be targeted by the other men in my family, you know what I mean? Like my dad and my uncle or other guys, you know what I mean? because I had been targeted, it made me think that she had been targeted too. And that people were secretly getting her to do a shitload of drugs and taking pictures and videos of her, because I knew that my dad used to be really attracted. Um, Apparently, my dad and uncle, at least my dad, used to be really attracted to his cousin Carrie. And that used to be something that like everybody knew about. So it was like, this cousin of mine who my dad was really attracted to got, targeted and, you know what I mean, really heavy and, was really, really strung out and, that you could really tell a difference. And then as soon as I spoke up for her and tried to be like, hey, you know what did you guys do? Did you guys do this to my cousin Carrie? Then she began to kind of like make fun of it online and stuff like that, which is fine. It's fine if you want to make fun of me for thinking that I might be trying, you know what I mean? For thinking that you might also be targeted too and for trying to look out for you. So she's definitely a skank who I never want to speak to ever again. I just spent the last 2 or 3 years being trafficked by the Biden administration and by my own close personal family who somehow had money mixed up with the Biden administration. So, I mean, if you guys are looking for money, there seems to be a few different hands between my family and the White House or the Secret Service or something weird going on there you guys know about and not me, because you guys were the ones to tell me that through YouTube. I needed help this entire time. I was basically kept held hostage with my kids our entire lives in Section 8 housing. We were kept super, super poor and super alone with basically no support network whatsoever. No help at all. So it would have been really cool to have had any access to any other family members at all who could have provided any help or relief or assistance or care, or even have been, any available in any way other than just, dinners and stuff sometimes where it doesn't seem like we're allowed to actually talk or say anything, and where we're all going to be watched like hawks, and you know what I mean? It's really weird that a husband saying no between relatives would prevent these two relatives from interacting with each other. And I've just gone my whole life. I don't even know how old Lisa is now, but she's gone her whole life with a niece ish person who she, you know what I mean? Motherfucker's gonna act like she ain't even allowed to talk to, and that's bullshit. Why am I not allowed to talk to my own family members? That's weird, isn't it? And they're especially not allowed to talk to me before they pass away. That's a really big deal. And then also, I'm gonna add the other grandpa into the video about my grandpa, and I'm gonna do those two in another video. So in this one, it's just gonna be Ela, Benjamin, and whoever else I listed off. Yeah, and I also just kind of wanted to shout out and sort of like involve that extended family that I know of, as far as my, that my dad's part of my extended family. That it's not like I haven't considered every one of those people. And now even all of the kids that those people had are grown, and I'm afraid to even talk to the kids because they also, they make every generation follow in their basically wicked ways. It's horrible, and I almost hate to put it to you in that biblical terminology, but that is exactly what it is. I couldn't tell you who those people are still alive or not, but yeah. Anyways, I guess that's all that I have to say about that for now. Yeah, that was my great grandmother. I can't really think of anything more to say about that. I also know that my great granny wasn't taken that good of care of. Like, I know that I already said that, but I will say that, like, one time I went to her house and I moved a picture that was on the wall, and like 50 roaches ran out from behind it. And I couldn't believe that. And it was literally only a small picture, and I just like moved it slightly. and I watched all these roaches that were behind it run out. And I just couldn't believe that this woman who gave me these, childhood memories, how all of the kids played on the, wood, on those hardwood floors, you know what I mean, in that house in Texas. And irregardless of what my grandma says, those were good people. Um, and just for the conditions that she lived in, to be that poor, and for nobody to be looking out for her, for nobody to be showing up and making sure that she was fed, you know what I mean? And then also to be charging her money, and you know what I mean? And then also to be, keeping her isolated and stuff like that. I definitely feel like her spirit came back to me and um, let me know about it, even though that might um, sound like it has nothing to do with anything. It had everything to do with everything for me. And that was honestly the beginning of me going ahead and accepting that like maybe God, um, was that maybe God is so serious about um, the sin of murder, and just the pain that comes with it, and just the pain that came with the selfishness behind these people being hurt. And I don't expect for anyone to get in trouble, or for anyone to deem what happened to my great granny as a murder situation, or my great grandpa. But in a way, I kind of do think that they did the same thing to my great granny that they did to my grandpa. And I was very, very devastated and sad to hear about how sad my great grandma was before she passed away. And I would not have remembered it all and put it all together at the same time if it hadn't been for really feeling that presence of my great granny in my kitchen, asking me, "Hey, you remember when the last time I talked to you was?" Uh, super weird stuff, you guys. I hope that I sort of told the story well enough for people to understand the weirdness of it all, but also I hope that I told the story well enough for people to understand the actual crime and grievous aspects of it all. All right. And her name was Ela. Like I said, it's an absolutely beautiful name. Um, that's a part of my life that is really nostalgic to remember being a little bitty kid playing with blocks and stuff. All right. Thanks, you guys.